Hello, Simon.
Hello, Bruce. How are you today?
I'm feeling chipper, thank you very much. How are you?
I'm trying to think of a word that also means chipper. Without stealing your thunder, I'm feeling perky.
Perky.
There you go.
We're perky and chipper. Maybe we should start by telling people who we are and what this is and what we do.
That's a good idea. It leaves less up to the imagination, doesn't it? So we are, first of all, I'm Simon Wells.
And I'm Bruce Fielding.
And we are both professional voiceover artists, as hopefully you can tell by now.
Yeah, we can do this all day long.
Absolutely. And we are also both nerds. We love random facts. We are both pub quiz attendees.
We are.
And we're here to share some of our useless knowledge with you through the platform of this podcast, which is called Factoraly. We're not aficionados by any stretch of the imagination. We're not experts on any of the subjects that we talk about. But we're here to have a chat, and you are welcome to come and listen.
Shall we talk about bicycles?
Go on then, why not?
I don't know that much about bicycles, actually. I know reasonable. I've had some. I've got one at the moment. I had a tricycle when I was very young.
Did you?
I did. It had a boot.
Brilliant. It was a tricycle with a boot?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course, I'm a chauffeur.
Well, naturally, of course. What did you put in the boot of your tricycle when you were a boy?
Toys. It was blue. It was a baby blue colour.
Oh, that's sweet. Little Bruce on his little trike.
Yes. So what was your first bicycle?
My first bicycle was a BMX. I had a blue BMX. Couldn't do any tricks on it or anything like that, but it was the popular brand at the time, so that's what I had. And I took it down to the local park. We had this it was a very small racing track, and it was used primarily for remote-controlled cars.
Oh, wow.
Which my dad and I went and used quite a lot. We had a couple of RC cars. But when there was no one using it for that purpose, kids went around it on their bikes.
Yes.
Which I did with great glee.
And gusto.
Indeed, some of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I learned to ride in my back garden, but I learned to ride backwards because there was a hill, and I figured I was safer going down the hill backwards than going down forwards. And I was completely unsupervised. I was given a bicycle, and there you go, learn to ride that.
That's an interesting logic. Immediately that makes me think, how on earth did you know where you were going?
It was only in the back garden. I knew where I was.
Oh, fine.
Going.
Okay. That's okay then. So bicycles.
Yes. Bicycle. It's like two wheels.
Very good. Yep. The etymology of the cycle bit comes from the word kuklos, which means wheel. So a bicycle is a two-wheeled device. And these have come in so many different shapes and sizes and varieties over the years. The first piece of equipment that we can sort of look at that looks like what we would imagine didn't have pedals, but it was called the dandy horse.
Yes. I'll put some in the show notes. There's some wonderful pictures of people dressed up on dandy horses.
Yeah, so yes, gentlemen in top hats, ladies in big billowing gowns rode these things. Dandy horse, it was originally, there are different claims as always. The most likely
It was British. No, it was definitely British.
If you ask the French, they say it was them. If you ask us, you say it was us. It was most likely a German chap called Karl Dreiss who created the Lauf machine, the running machine, in 1817.
But not a running machine.
Not a machine that runs.
Yes, and not one of the machines that you get on to run.
No, not that. So these things have actually had a bit of a resurgence with children recently. I think they call them balance bikes these days. A small wooden bike with no pedals or anything like that, and your feet touch the ground, and you simply push yourself along 1 foot at a time. I've no idea why I'm making this action. This is an audio podcast. So yes, that's how it started off. You sat astride this wooden frame, and you sort of walked yourself or ran yourself along on wheels.
So you could kind of like lift your feet up when you were going downhill.
Yes.
And did it have brakes?
No. You sort of put your foot out on the ground and dragged yourself to a halt.
Right.
But at the same time,
avoid hills then.
Avoid hills, yes, absolutely. Going up one would be nigh on impossible anyway under such conditions.
True. Yeah.
But yes, the idea of seeing a Victorian lady or gent astride one of these things is is quite a silly image.
Yes. And I think when they did the illustrations, they kind of overdid the legs as well. So it always looks like they've got sort of fairly short body and fairly long legs.
Yes, that's true. So that was the dandy horse, or the Lauf machine.
Yeah.
And then it sort of went through various permutations. In French, it was called the velocipede, which means
Isn't
fast
that a
foot.
dinosaur?
Close. That's a velociraptor.
Okay.
Silly.
Sorry. Being silly.
But yeah, so this thing first appeared in 1817. It was not until around the late 1830s, early 1840s that they became mechanical. Pedals were put on. So instead of going under, well, I suppose you're still under foot power in a strange way, but instead of pushing yourself along with your feet, there were pedals attached directly to the front wheel. And as you turned the pedals, the wheel went round. And that's what made you go. Several claims for that as well. It may have been first invented by a Scottish fellow called Kirkpatrick Macmillan in 1839. It may have been invented by a Frenchman around the same time.
It was the Scotsman.
It was it?
Yeah.
You sound very certain.
Don't I? That's one of my specialities in voiceover. I know what I'm talking about. No, I really don't.
Well, you said it in such a manner that it sounds trustworthy.
So this Scotsman that invented the pedal-powered bicycle.
Absolutely uncategorically invented it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
So were both the wheels at that point the same size?
No, so right from the start, the front wheel was slightly bigger than the back, until we got to the point of it being ridiculously bigger than the one on the back. Think of a penny farthing.
The penny farthing,
yes.
Yeah.
I can never remember which of those two coins is bigger, a penny or a farthing.
You're so young.
Thank you.
So a penny was bigger.
Was it?
A farthing was a quarter of a penny.
Okay. Well, there you go. Right, so the penny was the front wheel and the farthing was the back wheel is what we've established.
Yes.
Good. With the seat precariously perched directly above the center of the front wheel. So it was quite a thing to get onto. You sort of pushed the bike along, you clambered one foot up onto the pedal, and then you just jumped up onto the seat above the front wheel.
Yeah, I've seen people do it.
Have you, in real life?
Yeah.
It frightens me. It looks really scary.
If you're practiced at it, it looks very elegant.
Okay.
Because you basically, you sort of like hop along, you sort of run with the bike a little bit to get it up to speed. And then you sort of hop on with it's a bit like a horse. You kind of put your left foot on the left pedal first, with your right foot sort of trailing.
Yes.
And then you sort of hop, and then you swing your right leg over the bicycle.
Yes.
And then sit down.
That was a perfect description.
Yes. But yes, if you see people who don't know what they're doing do it, it looks very clumsy and horrible, and generally ends in tears. But if you see somebody who knows what they're doing,
it looks good. So yes, the front wheel was bigger than the back wheel. In a time before gears, the pedals were fixed, completely fixed to the wheel.
A fixie.
A fixie, is that what they called it?
Yeah. Well, no, that's what they call it now.
Oh, I see. Retrospectively.
When you have, people have those really posh, super duper light aluminium sort of titanium, carbon fiber bikes that have no gears. They basically it's a direct drive from the pedal to the back wheel.
Yes,
they're called fixies because it's a fixed ratio.
Fixed. Oh, I see. So you really do have to pedal as hard as matches the speed that you're going and the number of rotations of the wheel.
Yes, no Sturmy Archer for you, young man.
Thank you. Do you care to explain yourself?
Sturmy Archer. When I was a kid, Sturmy Archer gears was the first 3-speed gear was a Sturmy Archer gear.
Oh, I see.
It was like a fairly large aluminium control. And yes, it had like a lever on it, and you would click it like with a very satisfying clack from between 1, 2, and 3, and it would shift the derailleur would shift the chain from the smallest to the largest gearing.
Right. Okay.
So no gears on these things.
No gears on them at all. Yeah, so gears didn't come in until the early 1870s. So this idea of having your pedals fixed directly to the wheel went on for, half a century before, here it comes, an English person, Bruce.
Yes. And I actually know who made the company that made the first geared bicycle.
Go on then, over to you.
It's a company called Ariel.
Ah.
And the reason I know this is because there's a company called Ariel that still exists. I mean, Ariel went on from making bicycles to motorcycles. So it was called the Square 4 Ariel motorcycle was very famous in its day. And then nearly 20 years ago, a guy started to make motor vehicles called Ariels.
Okay.
And I bought one of the first Ariel Atoms that was made.
Ooh.
And bought two more after that one.
Okay.
And founded the Owners Club. So I was the chairman of the Ariel Atom Owners Club.
Wow.
So that's why I know about Ariel bicycles. But I don't know much more about them than that. First geared bicycle.
You know more about them than I do, because I wasn't even going to mention the fact that they were called Ariel, because I didn't realize that. I do know that it was invented by a chap called James Starley in 1871, but I hadn't twigged onto the name Ariel. As soon as you started talking about Ariel, I started thinking of washing powder.
Yeah, or the Little Mermaid.
All that, yeah. So this gentleman, James Starley, there were 3 English chaps based around Coventry who got together to create the first, what they called then the safety bicycle. Because the pedals were fixed directly to the wheels, it meant that you couldn't really slow down terribly quickly without, doing yourself a mischief.
Yes.
Or without the bicycle just sort of grinding to a complete halt.
Or tumbling.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And there were quite a few accidents that, had occurred because of this. So yes, Starley, Lawson and Shergold introduced the first chained bicycle, certainly. And then, as you say, the first geared bike in 1871. So that meant that you didn't have to have the enormous front wheel anymore. It meant that you didn't have to be so high off the road because of the enormous front wheel, and therefore it was all a little bit safer.
And this was in the UK or all over the world?
So it started off in Coventry in the UK, and it slowly, well, not very slowly actually, it quickly came on. People suddenly realised, oh yeah, this is quite a good idea.
I mean, they were big in America, obviously, huge bicycles in America, because they kind of gave you that freedom for less well-off people who couldn't afford a horse.
Right.
So if you can't afford a horse and you can't afford to keep a horse, what you can do is you can have a bicycle. And there were a pair of brothers in America who thought, this bicycle idea, that's quite good. So they started a factory, and their surname was Wright.
Right.
And these Wright brothers started a bicycle factory. And I think you might have heard of what they did after that.
Yeah, it's something about flying. I can't really remember.
Something. Anyway, basically their bicycle business took off, and they did really, really well. And they managed to invest in other things.
Right, fine. But they started off making bikes.
They were originally a bicycle company.
I did not know that.
But they've taken off quite a lot now, haven't they? I mean, it just exploded globally.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a terribly proficient cyclist. The majority of my experience of cycling comes from the fact that I used to be a postman. And the bicycle was an essential part of our equipment.
One of those 2-tonners.
So Royal Mail used a manufacturer called Pashley.
They're very smart bicycles, Pashley.
Yeah. So we went through... I'm not with them anymore. They went through a few different varieties of bicycle, but the one that was prevalent whilst I was there was called the Pashley Pronto, which was a step-through bicycle. You could sort of slip on and off the bike on either side, without doing yourself too much of a bother.
Because there was a crossbar, which was like I'm using my hands again.
Bruce is now making a very good rendition of a crossbar using his arm parallel to the ground.
Thank you very much. As opposed to so that was sort of like the male crossbar.
Yes.
And then they realised that it was very difficult for women in sort of large skirts to get over that crossbar.
Yes.
So they basically made it into like a second bar at the bottom.
Yes, that's right, yes. So you sort of had a big gaping gap between the upright that held the saddle and the upright that held the handlebars. You just had a gap in between the two, and you could just casually sidle your way out of it. Many of the postal workers I worked with referred to it as the ladies' bike in a slightly derogatory fashion, but I liked it. So yes, Royal Mail were using bicycles to deliver the mail for ages. Ever since sort of the mid-1800s, they started using them. They started giving their postal workers an allowance to go and buy their own bike if they wanted to. But in 1896, they made it an official policy and started buying and then producing their own bicycles for their staff to use. And then in 2010, whilst I was still in the company, they officially stopped using them.
Oh, shame. Postman on a bicycle, such a nice thing.
Isn't it? What an image.
Bicycles haven't always been for fun.
Hmm.
They were also used in the Boer War.
Really?
Yes.
Talk about that then.
So in 1895, in the Jameson Raid,
right,
it was in the Second Boer War.
Mm-hmm.
Horses were on the way out, but they didn't want to go full sort of. 1895, there were really no cars, but they realised they needed something to replace the horses, so they adopted the bicycle.
Okay,
and then this was kind of picked up by the Germans in the First World War,
right?
Who had the Jaeger Light Infantry Battalion of bicycles.
Wow!
So the German military had them, and they had them in the Second World War as well.
Okay,
there were bicycle battalions.
Really?
Because the other thing is, of course, that you can't jump out of a plane with a horse.
No, I've heard that.
So it's quite tricky.
Yeah.
But you can jump out of a plane with a bicycle. So technically, if you're a paratrooper, you can hit the ground, and you don't have to be running. You can be cycling.
Right.
So you get to where you're going much faster. You can be dropped slightly further away, so a bit more safe, and then cycle into the zone that you're supposed to be fighting in.
I had no idea this was a thing that they did.
It's amazing. And the Japanese in the Second World War employed bicycles everywhere because a lot of those jungles that they were in were quite tricky to navigate. But actually on a bicycle, you're quite narrow.
Yeah.
So you can go through gaps and you can move faster and you kind of get from A to B a lot quicker than you do by marching.
Yes, I suppose so. Yeah, how interesting.
And in fact, the Eastern European and Scandinavian armies, like the Finnish, the Swedish, the Polish armies, they were using bicycles until about 1970.
Really?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
There's only one country that actually didn't ever bother using bicycles in the military. Can you guess which one that was?
Oh, don't tell me it was us.
It wasn't us.
Oh, good. Okay.
It was the Americans.
Oh, really?
Yes. Americans have never used bicycles in war.
Okay. Well, I mean, there are a lot more countries that have used bicycles in war than I ever realised, because I didn't realise that was a thing.
Isn't it good?
Mm.
Well, it's not good.
Well,
war is never good.
No,
but
fantastic. I'm picturing an awful lot of soldiers on bikes hurtling towards each other, perhaps to the Ride of the Valkyries or something like that, in a sort of very aggressive and determined manner.
Yes,
almost like jousting.
That was the picture that's going through my head. Although they probably either had rifles with bayonets fitted,
yes.
or they would have had machine guns.
Yes,
I think they mostly didn't use them for actively battle. I think they used them for transportation, just to get from A to B.
Okay. No, you've ruined that image now. No, they used it for jousting.
There have been various improvements to the bicycle over the years.
Mm.
I guess the biggest advance that came was on the tyres and the wheels.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. They were originally some of the earliest bicycles. Even sort of going back to the dandy horse I mentioned right at the start. Some of them were nicknamed the Bone Shaker.
Yes, some of them still are, aren't they? Today, it's like getting
really?
on the old Bone Shaker.
I didn't realise that was still in use. But yeah, in the days where there was zero suspension and your wheels were solid wood, you're going to feel absolutely every bump.
I mean, there have been all sorts of other improvements and advantages to riding bicycles. And as you said, suspension is another big one.
Yes.
And brakes and having rubber brake blocks.
Rubber brake blocks.
Okay.
Tongue twister of the day.
It's tongue twister time for the voiceovers. Rubber brake
Rubber brake
blocks.
blocks. Rubber brake blocks. Rubber brake blocks.
Oh, I'm going to write that one down.
I'm going to use it. That's far better than Betty Botter with her bitter batter bit. Or something.
Yes, it's better than that.
Good.
So we had sort of rubber brakes and we had suspension and all sorts of, and then the seats got comfier as well.
Yes.
And the first seats actually were sprung.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Well, the first comfy seats were sprung, and then they started to put more fabric and material and padding in them.
Yes.
And then they started taking it out for some reason recently, and the bicycle seats now look as though they do some serious damage.
They're very narrow and pointy looking, aren't they? They don't look comfortable at all.
No, I think what that is that if you see the very well designed Lycra cycling shorts, they are padded in that area.
That's true. The seat itself, yes.
So maybe the padding has moved from the seat to the clothing.
Interesting.
I mean, some bikes are actually probably quite comfortable. There's a thing called a recumbent.
Okay.
Do you know about recumbent bicycles?
No.
I mean, they are literally what they sound like. They're bicycles that you lay down in.
Oh, is that what those are called?
Yes.
Ah.
So the pedals are way up the front.
Yes.
And the seat is sort of like halfway, and there's like a back. So you actually like settle down. They're very low.
Yeah.
So if you're driving any kind of decent sized car, you can't see them.
Yeah.
So they have to have flagpoles and stuff to make sure that you can actually see where they're going. But there is a lot of people who believe that the recumbent bicycle is the next level, is the evolution of the bicycle. Oh, we did talk about gears earlier as well, and how gearing helps you to... I mean, gearing is one of the things that helps you to go faster, helps you to go uphill. I did a quick bit of research and I discovered there was a bike that had 1,500 gears on it.
Beg your pardon. I can't even picture what that would look like.
I think when you make a sandwich with 8 pieces of bread.
Oh, yeah, standard, every day.
And between each piece of bread, there's quite a large filling. I would imagine it looked like that.
Yeah, I would think so.
It was like practically impossible to eat, i.e. practically impossible to ride.
That's a lot of gears.
That is an awful lot of gears.
I was having a look at what is the fastest speed that someone has ever managed to get on a pedal bicycle.
Well, obviously the speed limit is 20 miles an hour in Regent's Park, so nobody ever goes faster than that.
Of course not, no.
I would think it would probably be up in the 60s, 60 miles an hour, maybe 70 miles an hour.
Okay, that's a good guess, 183. Now, I should caveat this.
What?
Yeah. I should state that speed wasn't gotten up to by manual power.
Okay.
They had a helping hand. But so they didn't start
a tow rope.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So this was in September of 2018. Denise Mueller-Koronek from San Diego set this record, and she was towed by a drag car up to that speed, and then released, and she maintained that speed for a full minute.
Can you imagine what the gearing must have been like on that bicycle?
Oh, it must be phenomenal, mustn't it? But because of the speed she was going, the dragster, the car that took her up to that speed, had sort of a screen around the back of it, which created a nice little slipstream.
Oh, a bubble.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah. So very, very very little wind resistance, and she managed to maintain that staggeringly high speed in the wake of this car for a full minute, and that was that is officially the fastest that anyone has ever cycled on a bicycle.
And that's on the flat. I guess that must be on the flat rather than down a hill.
Yeah, so this was done in Utah on one of the salt lakes there.
Oh,
so
wow.
a nice big open flat area.
I mean, frankly, for me, going like 20 or 30 on a bicycle, I do have a bicycle,
right?
It's fine. It's not as nice as going on the motorcycles, but it's fine.
It does the job.
It does the job. And I've actually replaced the front wheel with an electric front wheel, so
okay.
It's kind of a little. I get a little bit of an assist,
right?
with it, which is nice.
Electric bicycles. That's something I did no research on at all.
No, me neither. I don't believe in them. I think they're basically motorcycles. It's a bicycle with a motor, so it's a motorcycle. Yes. And in fact, some of the earliest motorcycles were bicycles.
Right.
There was a thing in France, I remember in my youth, called is it a velocette, which is like it's a bicycle, but they have a very small petrol motor, like a 2-stroke motor. Anyway, so it has a rubber wheel that drives the front wheel.
Right.
And you can adjust the power of that on the handlebar. So technically, it is a sort of a motorcycle.
Yeah, okay.
But it's a bicycle that you've added a motor to.
Yeah.
And the first motorcycles were actually bicycles that you added motors to. I know you like a fact. Did you discover what the longest bicycle was?
I did. Now, we've had a few occasions in the past where we both think that we've found the correct world record.
Is Simon's bigger than mine?
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. So on the count of 3, let's say how long the longest bicycle that we've
in feet or meters?
Ooh, crikey.
I've got mine in feet.
I'll convert mine to feet. It's fine.
Okay.
Just to keep up with you. Okay.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
136
feet.
Oh,
you beat me.
Okay, talk about yours.
I researched it. I thought Simon's going to want to say how long the longest bike is, and I got to 100. So obviously you beat me. So tell me more about your 155 foot.
So my
bike.
155 foot and 8-inch long bicycle, which in metric is 47.5 meters. This was built by an Australian fella called Bernie Ryan, and it's a very odd looking thing. It's just one big long continuous welded frame of bars and crossbars and so on. It's got a seat at the front, where the one person sits and steers. It has a seat right at the back where someone sits and pedals.
Yeah,
and then there's just an awful lot of frame in between the two.
So just a huge amount of space between the front and the back.
Yes. I don't think it really has any useful practical purpose. It's probably very difficult to get round corners on.
Where are the brakes? I suppose they're on the person at the front.
I didn't look into that.
Because it's a bit, you see these cars where they put one car on top of another, and the car on top has the steering wheel, and the car on the bottom has the accelerator and brake.
Yeah.
You must be able to have contact with the person sitting 155 feet behind you.
You'd like to think so, wouldn't you? Yes.
Stop pedaling. But of course, you can fill that space with more seats and more handlebars and more pedals.
Well, yes, I would imagine so. Yeah.
I remember the goodies.
Yes, I do.
Goody, yum.
Yes.
Used to have now I looked this up.
Hmm.
All bicycles with more than one seat are called tandems.
Are they?
Regardless of how many seats they have. So the goodies had a 3-seater, which they called a tandem.
Right.
Because it was 3.
Because it was funny.
But technically, it's actually a tandem. So
Right.
the goodies triple bicycle was a tandem.
Okay.
As was the one that had 35 seats.
What?
That was 67 foot long. Still called a tandem.
Oh, brilliant.
But 35 people riding it.
And all pedalling.
Okay.
I mean, that makes a lot more sense than this.
But can you imagine organising 35 people to start pedaling at the same time?
It would probably have taken quite a lot of trial and error.
Yeah. A whistle. At least.
At least. The very least. So there we go. That has been another episode of Factoraly. Thank you so much for coming along and listening to us waffle.
Thank you.
And if you've enjoyed yourself, then please come again next time, where we will pick another random topic to talk about for about half an hour, and we will enjoy your company then.
Definitely. Until then, cheerio.
Bye-bye.